Us right now from somewhere around the world is Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
This thing is just there. We go. Let me get this thing adjusted
Oh,
so
that's
you guys
much
can hear
better.
me.
Much better. How we doing tonight, Mike?
Okay, is it good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go. You sound great.
Awesome.
Sound great. All right. Welcome to the broadcast. A lot going on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it most certainly is.
Mike?
It most certainly. You know, I was thinking about that yesterday, Pastor Paul. We're going to have to. I'm going to have to set some things up where we can have visuals to some of these discussions for a bit of clarity for everybody.
I like that idea, Mike. I like that idea.
Yep.
We'll work on it, and we'll work with you and Heidi, work that out, and I'll work that in with Israel or Brock, and we'll have visuals on these broadcasts so that really helps bring clarity to stuff. That'd be great. Amen to that. Speaking of that, Mike, there was 1.3 million thunderbolts last night hit Australia. They call it the lightning apocalypse. It broke all records. What in the world's going on that would cause 1.3 million thunderbolts to hit Australia in one evening?
Well, we have heightened atmospheric densities, and of course, that creates more static, more potential for discharges in the atmosphere, right? Essentially, our atmosphere, the Earth, and space acts like what's called a capacitor, right? And in between a capacitor, let's talk about the air-filled capacitor. It has two plates, and within those plates is a voltage potential, and it won't allow direct current to go through it, but it will allow alternating current to go through it, which means if polarity is changing back and forth, you can pass that electromotive force, that voltage right through the air to the other plate, right? So one plate discharges, the other plate picks up. It'll pass through. But if you have consistent current going into one plate, nothing happens, right? It's like taking your battery off or one of the battery leads off your battery of your car won't do anything. If that battery were alternating current and you had a capacitor, disconnected, but put a capacitor in between, it would still start, that's the theory. Anyway, it allows direct current to go through or to stop. It stops direct current, allows alternating current to go through. Now, the atmosphere is polarized, right?
Right. So you're saying
north and south and north and south, polarized in several different areas. And with a higher density, you have there's a plasma effect that goes on in the atmosphere. Just to make it simple, let's just say our atmosphere is constantly charging up, right? Yes. Which is why the auroras people will begin to see is going to be beautiful. Yes. It's also going to be a telltale sign that we're in trouble, big trouble. And these will be consistent auroras. We're talking about every night people are going to have their cameras taking pictures, right?
What?
So it'll become that's actually, and up there in the atmosphere, Pastor Paul, is going to get so charged that in several areas, as what is happening right now, there are certain areas on Earth, if you walked in those areas, your hair would stand straight up. These areas are spreading, which means the voltage potential is transferring from the atmosphere, right? Which is where it's harmless, directly to Earth. Now, here's the bad part to this. As we have incoming debris, right?
Yes,
and
we do.
Big bodies are coming in. For example, say the planet, Mercury or something like that started getting close to us. We would have discharges back and forth between the Earth and this other planet because both have their own type of charge going on, right? So you're looking at this discharge taking place back and forth. On a small scale, it's happening in the atmosphere. We're having more and more particles loading up in the atmosphere, right? It's getting pretty heavy up there.
Yeah.
These particles have a charge, and every time the conditions are right, they start discharging, causing all these lightning effects, right?
Yes.
It's going to get worse. It'll get worse. Listen, there will be a time, I said this before, that people, right, weather is going to become an enemy of all people. It will then, people are going to realize this because they'll start blowing up things on military bases and everything else. It's going to be dangerous by way of lightning, right? It's going to be very loud.
Is the
but
five
we'll also have something we have not had in thousands of years. They're called sustained plasma discharges. Right?
Now, is that coming from the sun, or is that coming from the
From our atmosphere.
Five waves of energy?
The sheer power potential of the atmosphere is amazing. Well, for example, the human body, right? Your body right now, you could electrocute somebody. You know that, don't you?
No!
You can actually electrocute somebody. Your body produces enough power, right? Enough electricity, right? You could electrocute somebody. You could. So just think of it that way. That's something that we normally deal with, but nobody ever thinks of it that way. But in truth, your body is a perfect.
So is it a conduit?
Like a perfect industrial plant or something like that. Produces power all the time.
Is it a conduit, or it's a source of energy, like a conduit, or is it more of a source of energy?
What, the body?
Yeah.
Well, the body, God is so awesome. And allow me to be nerdy just for a minute. God put these small manufacturing facilities all over the planet. Take a plant, for example. This gets to the body. A plant can take dirt. You put a plant in dirt, right? You can take in light. It can take in dirt. It can take in all this other stuff. But what does it produce? A perfectly balanced set of nutrients, a food source, right? So it converts nothing into food. Your body can then take that food and convert that food, all sorts of food, into pure raw energy. It's the most efficient production, system ever. And it amazes me. But the electricity in your body is also producing. Now, this is just your physical body, not spiritual, but your physical body. It's producing all this power. That power is dampened by your willpower, right? Your willpower, your willpower and focus to do something. You can essentially redirect or command all the cells in your body to focus towards any point you want to, if you believe, right?
That's right.
Your willpower, when you believe in something, you actually send instructions to your body chemically at first, and your body begins to carry out whatever you ask it to do, right? Now, relating that back to the earth again, the earth likewise has a power potential of many thousands, millions, if not billions, of nuclear weapons right here on the earth. All the elements of think about a nuclear bomb. Where do they get the material from? The earth, right? The earth is more powerful than what people know. And when you have bodies coming externally, there are properties in the earth that change, right? The temperature, the voltage potential, but sustained plasma discharges are actually engraved in ancient rocks. They're not beings. These engravings are not beings. They're found all over the world. They were a warning. They almost look like an hourglass. You can find them everywhere. And what they are is plasma discharges, as was described by the Egyptians and the Greeks, right? And some much older races. Even the giant, you may not know this, but before the Egyptians, you had what they call the giant Egyptians. Anybody ever hear that before?
I did. Is that during the time of the giants that were on the earth during the days of Joshua and Caleb? Or are they before them?
No, that was probably near the time, but long before the Egyptians were ever there were a race called giant Egyptians.
Okay.
Right? They were giants. And so these giant Egyptians were highly efficient in mathematics. Like the atom is described inside of several temples, right? The atom, right? The electron, different particles that people play with today. They were discovered a long time ago.
I heard that.
But of course, it messes up Darwin's theory, and they're just not releasing this because nobody cares what people find out these days. They just don't. But these giant Egyptians, they were the ones that carved those plasma discharges down first and said they were punishment for what their fathers did. That's what they wrote down, for what their fathers did. Now, these giant Egyptians, right, they have carvings that they're digging out both in Saudi Arabia, parts of Egypt, Ethiopia. When you say giant, I'm not talking about 12 feet, 14 feet, 20 feet. I'm talking about giant, unbelievably huge. In fact, they know for a fact it was a fallen monolith. that fell. You know how high it was?
How high?
This thing was 1,500 feet.
No!
Who makes something 1,500 feet? And what was this? How in the world can that be? And it was standing straight up because the base is still there. It's broken in place and it lays on the ground, fractured in about 7 or 8 parts. It's still underneath the earth, right? It was captured by... So there's so many mysteries being dug up these days, right? They're just being dug up. So there were some dinosaurs. Everybody knows about the dinosaurs. They lied to people about the dating of the dinosaurs. They just lied to everybody. First of all, some of these dinosaur species had vocal cords. Nobody ever told anybody that. But it seems strange because we're raised in a type of cultured history, you know, something that everybody can agree upon that won't interfere with what we're doing now. The truth is, most of the bones from the dinosaurs, of all those bones, there were only a handful found intact. The rest, they did their best guess and put them back together again. That's the truth. So you have some pretty giant species that were on the earth. Yeah. These were the ones God also talked about as being, you know, terrible back in the time, because these fallen angels, they corrupted animals likewise. So everything was big and gawky, and then they all died out. But they did leave records. And in Israel, there are certain families in Israel that have access or have archaeology that they will not share with the world. They're guarded, but of course, you probably know this. They're guarded by families. Families keep them. They won't let them out. And past all, some of these families have some pretty interesting archaeological finds in there. But they also confirm a history of Earth, this you know, more in line with Genesis 6. But even they don't want to accept the fact that Genesis 6 was real, right? They really don't. But they have they have all the evidence right there, you know, some of those archaeological finds. What happened back then, we're steadily going through today, is what I'm saying ultimately. The same buildup to the flood is happening right now before our eyes. Almost like the same buildup. The same buildup that took place in Egypt is happening right now. It always starts the same. Right, the heightening of volcanism and all these other component happenings of the earth, because the earth is being overcharged, right? And that can only happen through external bodies that are massive. So, you have to have a lot of mass to do that. So it has to be something external, something large, something that very few people have seen before or even know about, but it's large.
So you're saying that this large mass, this binary system, which is moving on the outskirts of our solar system, but as it's approaching, as it's going by, it's shaking up everything. The heavens are shaking just like Jesus said it would, and the debris clouds are gathering, are getting closer. We're being inundated with charged particles. We're being supercharged from the inner core of the earth, and that's causing massive lightning strikes. Plasma discharges are hitting us. The earth is expanding because of all of this, with the magma moving and the volcanism of the volcanoes, and the climate is changing, and the earth is reeling and rocking, and the earthquake. You're saying the 5 waves of energy is what's really, and that's coming from the binary system, planet X, planet number 9, call it what you want. This is not going to let up. Is that right, Mike? I mean, give me the next 10 years, and if time lasts, what will happen to this earth during the next 10 years?
Well, Pastor, I was speaking to a guy who's very, he's responsible for quite a few breakthroughs in history on Earth. His calculation was this: if we did a scale from 0 to 100 of some of the events that take place, in 100% meaning humanity can barely live, right? 0 meaning we're in normal times. I asked him, I said, where do you think we are now? You know what he said? 0.5%. So what? From 0 to 100, we're only at 0.5, at which case about 20, and things are exponential. Here's what it means. All this buildup that took place in the last 55 years will now take place in about 2 years. Right?
What?
And then after that 2 years, that will then take place in about, a few months. So you're looking at an escalation of events. And the reason they're not slowing down is because when you have elements of no order whatsoever, right? Things are just seemingly coming out of order. They further complicate issues, right? So situations get worse. It's kind of like if you went in your house, right, and you didn't put anything back where it was. Every day that mess is going to compile itself. It's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse exponentially over time, right? Until your whole house is in chaos. The same thing is happening to the earth. And when you're talking about the energy, from the amount of energy and radiation this earth is absorbing, there's no way 200 volcanoes is going to release that type pressure. You're looking at reactions within the earth that are bound up by God's mercy alone. You're looking at nuclear explosion type events that are taking place about probably 200, 300, 400, 500 times per second inside the earth. Now, but the shielding between what's happening in the earth and the surface is starting to break, right? It's not enough to hold it. And this is part of a cycle that becomes very, well, it's going to cost lives. It really will. I know I talk about this sometimes. It's going to cost lives. And so as these conditions exacerbate many more conditions, we're going to see things we have not seen before. Even in the Bible, it says these days we're about to go through is not comparable to anything in history. These would be the worst things that ever happened since the earth was created.
Yeah, it does say
if
that.
I've read that correctly, that's exactly what it states in the Bible, which means they had it mild compared to what we're about to get. The flood was nowhere close to what we're about to get.
Wow.
And that's not emphasized much, which is why I said, it'd be good if we had some presentation data to go with this stuff. So people could understand some of the dynamics, kind of look at it, study it, so they don't get shocked when things begin to happen, right?
Yes.
A lot of people get scared of this, Pastor Paul, because they want to live forever. This is their paradise, right?
Yeah.
Earth is their paradise. Earth is a place prepared for God's children, but it certainly is not my paradise, not till Christ comes back, and he can do what he wants to do. But he gave us instruction. He gave us a timeline. He gave us indications of what's going to happen to the earth, and they are happening whether people realize it or not. It's just like some of the asteroids that are coming in, some of the comets that are coming in. We have a lot more coming in than in 3 days. In 3 days, I'm going to be on high alert in 3 days. I'm going to be on high after that 3 days. I'm going to be on high alert a couple days after that, if I'm not correct. In other words, this happens too much, right? 2 days ago, I was on high alert because there are too many inbounds coming in this direction.
Yeah, I mean,
it's only God's grace that we're not hit.
It's only by God's grace. Mike, we had just looking at the reports out of NASA, we've had 7 asteroids that missed the Earth in the last 5 days. These 7 asteroids, all closer than the moon, some of them just skimming by. We got another one tomorrow. These are the ones that they recognize, not the ones that I'm sure they didn't even see. And as you're saying, this debris cloud, these 2 debris clouds that are coming, they're intensifying the numbers of asteroids, meteorites, fireballs. There was a huge green fireball last night. Went over the eastern part of the United States from Georgia to New York. It lit up the world. And it happened to be the same time that SpaceX was launching a rocket with some satellites. Just so happened as they were going up, this thing was raging by. You got any comments on why this is? I mean, I guess you're saying this increase of asteroids and meteorites and fireballs is just the precursor to what's really coming.
Yeah, they are. Pastor Paul, it's amazing the way we think. We like you were just talking about some of these asteroids that are inbound. We always think, well, we almost got hit, no big deal. We did not. Here's the tragedy in that. We always think that it's a 1 in a million chance we're going to be hit. That's not true.
No.
It's a 1 in a million chance we won't be hit, which perfectly demonstrates God's grace and mercy.
Yeah.
But he already told us that his grace and mercy is going to begin to diminish from the world and be specifically over his people, not the world, to the point where a sinner is going to go hunt out a Christian just to be under their covering. Those days are coming too. So people are looking at things totally backward. Every time something just misses us, that's grace. You know how many things, I know this for a fact, there are so many tracks headed towards ours. We should have been hit many years ago, but there are weird things that happen right before it hits Earth. right before it's about to hit the International Space Station or something like that, something weird happens. Another object may hit it. It will change its trajectory. Gravity starts working in weird ways and pulls it to one side just a tad where it barely misses Earth. This happens so much, NASA won't deny it. JPL won't deny it. ASU won't deny it. None of these people will deny it. They knew it. Elon Musk, he really knows. He's working hard at keeping his mouth shut from what he knows, because he starts talking about stuff and things start leaking. But his only solution is to get off the planet. That's his only solution. NASA's only solution is to get off the planet. Now, they can tell everybody else, it's going to be 10,000 years, this, that, and the other, right? But I'm telling you right now, they're frightened. They're frightened. They're frightened of several things. And that's just one of them. They know there's no solution to that.
Well, you're worried in the next 3 days. Is that because of inbound meteorites or asteroids?
Oh yeah, I'm on watch for that. I'm on high alert. The next 3 days, I'll be on high alert because let's just say there's a probability involved that is very uncomfortable, and of course, when it deals with human life, that really attracts my attention. Unfortunately, Paul, even if something were to hit right on a coastline somewhere, even if it, for example, say it killed maybe 500-600 people, that story would last for what? A week, and then it would go away.
Yeah.
Nobody would think about that anymore.
Yeah.
And then worse things would come, which means people have a habit now of doing just like they did in the flood. Well, let's go to higher ground. And it really didn't click to them that they're in trouble until they couldn't go any higher. People are in the same state of mind right now, like zombies. Right? You know that book you wrote about zombie apocalypse? Yep. We're living that now. People act just like zombies. They're programmed to defend worldly knowledge, programmed to doubt the knowledge of Christ. And I have a favorite phrase I like to use. If anybody doubts the words of Christ, whose word are they believing? Because the only way you can doubt is if you already believe something else.
Yeah, you can't just doubt it and say, well, I don't know. And then say, but I don't have any. You can't just say, well, I don't have a clue on anything else. I just don't believe that. No, you don't believe that because you have to have a reason you don't believe that.
That's right.
You're leaning to some other, you got some other ideology or some other theology that you're trusting in more than you are the Word of God. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Pastor. And they they're getting more and more stubborn now. These are days of an alarm clock is going off inside the spirits of so many people. And things in the world are about to get a lot worse. We're headed for winter. Nobody is ready for this winter.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Pascal, when you have cold air, right?
Yeah.
Cold air brings, the atmosphere is going to be a bit lower than it normally is. When it's a bit lower, what do you have? Wind.
Heavy wind. Yeah.
You have wind. That wind can be dangerous. Our infrastructure cannot take more damage. Imagine hurricane force winds over the whole United States, over all of Europe. Imagine half of Europe freezing, even to waterfalls and little sprinkler systems and everything else. That stuff freezing. Somebody's going to have a super freeze event this winter, and they're not really sure who it is. They have their probabilities, but I'm telling you, a super freeze event is coming this winter, and it could, that's not going to be good for people, because people are not the public now. The governments they're taking this seriously, but the public is not. The government is presenting this nonsense to the people. I can't listen. Global warming is a bad term. Right? It's a bad term. Here's why. Because the entire solar system is heating up. Okay? Period.
Yeah.
Period. And there are no cows on Jupiter. Nobody's farting up there, so that's not going to work.
So in other words,
Jupiter is heating to a degree. I heard one guy say he's worried if Jupiter is going to ignite.
Okay.
He's worried.
So there's no man. There's no factories up there. There's no smog. There's no fog, no VOG. There's no pollution. Man's not throwing plastic in the water. And cows are not creating too much gas. So in other words, if Jupiter's heating up, it has nothing to do with humanity. It has everything to do with the atmosphere of the entire solar system. Is that possible?
Everything is changing. Everything is now pollution. Hey, I'm all behind. Let's clean up some of the less efficient things that we have, but don't sit there and act like car muffler is going to pollute the whole earth. We have a volcano going off And somebody ought to look up how much carbon monoxide is being released by that. We can't release that much carbon monoxide over, what was it? I think it was 120 years. That volcano did in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's releasing more in 2 days than we do. So what they're doing is, that's another method of control mixed with a partial truth is all that is. That's all it is. Because they're trying to keep us occupied. That's what they're doing. They're keeping us occupied with all this nonsense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. And then what does it ultimately do? Start fights with the Christians.
Yeah.
I'd like to give that warning tonight. Be careful about worldly knowledge, all this other stuff, because all it does is starts fights with Christians. And this time around, Pastor Paul, although we have a lot of Christians who are going home to be with the Lord, let me tell people something. People are under supernatural protection. And these folks walking around who think they're immune from everything, they better watch it. They better watch it.
Yeah.
All that mercy and grace is not going to stay with them. It's going to be gone. They're only alive due to mercy, due to a chance for them to get it right. But the Lord already made some promises. He said, not one hair on your head will be destroyed. Didn't he say that?
Yeah,
not one hair on your head will be destroyed.
So is everything accelerated? So everything's accelerated. Let me ask you a question. We'll come back to this. The blood moon, next Friday, November 19th, we're going to have the longest blood moon of this century. I find it quite interesting that we're going to have it now with so many different other events going on simultaneously. And it's going to last 3 hours and a half. Well, it's actually 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 23 seconds. So let's just round it up. It's 3.5 hours. Very interesting when you think about the 3.5 year period of the 7 year period in the Bible. So what's your thoughts on this prophetic event taking place at the same time we're having these atmospheric explosions, the debris field that's on the way, the volcanism? Is there something there that we should be looking at coming up next Friday, November 19th?
First of all, who can ignore 3.5 hours? Who in the world can ignore that number?
I know.
I certainly can't. I can't ignore that. You know what? I don't think like the rest of the world. I don't give man credit for things, because people will probably make up a story like, well, that's really what they're doing is moving the moon with, jet engines or something like that. I don't believe in that stuff.
No.
Because God said he created two great lights in the sky, one to rule the day, one to rule the night, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He put the stars in the heaven for signs and for seasons,
yes.
which actually equates in the Hebrew. Isn't that for signals? For signals. So this 3.5 hours is signaling something. It's an alert. It's an alert for those who read the Bible, who understand that 3.5 years, when it pops up to a person who reads the Bible, they can't ignore this. It's a signal, not for the world, because they won't interpret 3.5 years for anything, but we will. It's for us. And I often wondered, Jesus said the world knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So that means the world cannot decipher what the Lord is saying.
Amen.
They don't have ears to hear. We were given ears to hear because we read the Bible. And when that 3.5 years is mentioned for anything, any 3.5 hours, 3.5 minutes, whatever the case is, it's a clear signal for us. And because everybody can see it, we know it's not a minor signal, because the Lord says something consistently. You will see this and you will see that. Well, the Bible is written to everybody.
Yep.
So this is something that everybody can now have knowledge of. So it shouldn't be passive. Now I'll go ahead and be bold and say it.
All right.
Anybody else is afraid to, you watch and see if this doesn't signify something super major in the world. That 3.5
hours,
number, right?
Hours.
That's going to mean something, because God won't be mocked. He's certainly not going to let his word be a mockery to anybody.
Amen.
So, and they're going to try it. And the more they try to try and mock God's word, the worst thing is they're going to get in return, because he watches over his word to perform it. That's a clear signal, right? That's a clear signal. I believe it is significant to what that 3.5 year references. And we know that Jerusalem is trampled underfoot 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And what do we see in the Middle East, Pastor Paul? We see brand new alliances and ties. And we see armies rising in the Middle East nobody has ever seen before. They're now coming clean as to the equipment being used by those in the Middle East, right? They have hypersonic missile technology. They have some pretty tough stuff. And you got to ask yourself, Why haven't we put down those threats in the Middle East already? What is the problem? We're not talking about just one president, but no president has attempted to do this, save for Saddam Hussein. That's it. But they won't touch anybody else. What in the world is the problem? How hard could it be to get Turkey back on track? How hard could it be to get Lebanon back on track? It's not hard. It's not some deep committal that we have to make either, but something different is happening in the Middle East. Something that they're not telling everybody. Something that is, it must be of great consequence. And so nobody is touching those areas, just like Iran. Why has nobody, with all the threats that they say Iran has threatened Israel with, and indeed destabilizing the Middle East, why has no country taken care of them if they're a nobody? We have to think about those things. If they're just some backwaters nation, why hasn't someone regulated that nation militarily, whatever means, to set the people free? I tell you that they cannot do that. They can't do that. Nobody's going to walk in there, because that could potentially be a big problem for the country of which they come from. But we all know somebody's going to try it. It's going to come with high repercussions, right? Russia tried to intervene with Iran one time. It didn't work out so well. The U.S. tried to intervene dealing with Iran. It didn't work out too well. Saddam Hussein tried to do something to Iran. It didn't work out. Anybody who's messed with Iran, it didn't work out too well. So we're dealing with supernatural dominating forces in that territory. That weapons just they have no effect against.
It sounds like
God decreed them to exist during His time of prophecy fulfillment. They're not going anywhere. They will indeed exist until that time.
It sounds like, Mike, you're on to something really, and I'm so glad you picked up on this, agreeing with me on this 3.5 hour blood moon. It's actually going to be right over top of Canada and the United States. From one end of, that's where the blood moon's going to be right over. For 3.5 hours, it's us. It's over us. Now, we know that the 42 months, as you just made mention to, is the Jerusalem is trampled underfoot by the Gentiles. We know it's talked about 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. Daniel says time and half a time. That's 3.5 years. We got the 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And it even says at the midway point, that of course that the Antichrist actually reveals himself. So there's no other way around this but to take a look at this sign. And oh, by the way, it happens to be the longest blood moon of the century. This is a signal that we're getting. It's almost like we're getting ready to enter into the first 3.5 years. It's like we're almost going to get into it. And when you look at all the other things, Mike, you've been talking about, the debris field, the atmospheric compression, CERN, what they're doing down there, trying to pierce the veil, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the lightning, the charged particles, everything you've been discussing. It seems as if it's all the signs of the last days. So let me ask you another question. The armies of the Antichrist. Now, this is our next webinar that's coming up, December 3rd and 4th. You are going to be speaking in that. And I don't want you to give away your whole presentation, obviously, because you're going to hold some of that back because you can't say it all here anyway. But on this channel, but give us an ideal that, is this the timing? I mean, is this the timing of the gathering of the armies of the Antichrist? What do you see with all of these events colliding?
Pascal, slowly but surely, people are beginning to see a truth, right? I have to explain truth real quick. People, I'm going to say this boldly. People say they want truth, but the truth is they don't want truth. Here's why I say that.
Right.
In this day and age, it'd be like living in your family, and then all of a sudden you find out somebody in your family has betrayed you in a big way, right? Then everybody in the family is shocked because they betrayed you, right? Well, here's the problem with that, right? Because I like truth, but the Lord taught me how to prepare for truth too. When you find out somebody has dealt you a wrong deal in the family, and it's shocking to everybody, it's because they did not know the truth. And if they didn't know the truth, they were believing in a lie. It's not because the person changed all of a sudden. It's because the person was revealed all of a sudden.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So knowing truth is very upsetting. You had to prepare for that truth because it's nothing like, normally the truth is nothing like we forecast out of our own minds. And when it comes to the Middle East, like this 3.5 hour blood moon over the U.S. and Canada, we're the only ones that could stop a full-on invasion of Israel.
Us.
That will be the USA.
Yes.
The USA. And we have support systems in Canada. That's our porch.
Right.
Canada is a porch to the USA, which is the element that could stop anybody from going in there. But if it's over the USA and Canada, we have another problem. We have two monster systems, both in Canada and the USA. And if they were to go off, we would certainly be tripled. I'm talking about magma, right?
What?
I'm also talking about policy.
Are you serious?
Yes. The USA and Canada. Canada has there's a huge swath of land that is, it's very volcanic, sitting right there in Canada. Now, given the weather conditions that are coming, right, what would it really take to really begin to ignite that? It's not going to take much. We're already having a destabilizing event sitting right there in Alaska. Alaska is very important because Alaska is almost like a button, right, to these trigger points in both Canada and the USA regarding magmatic flow. And if in Alaska, if there's a breach in a weak point in Alaska, it's going to bend off right to Washington State, down to California, into Utah, going to the center portions of the U.S. and right into Canada, which, by the way, Canada has some very bad and odd spots there. So if we're crippled in that way, Pastor Paul, right? If we're crippled, we can't really get around. Plus, our command and control, a lot of that is in the area where the keyhole is. So if that button is pushed and we lose command and control of said forces, we're in real trouble. We can't do anything for anybody. We're going to have to pay attention to ourselves. So I find this blood moon to be extremely significant. Things are set up with redundancy, but due to this new type of person, right, they don't believe in anything. They don't believe it. They won't. You can tell these folks today it's going to, we're going to have large hail in about an hour. You don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
They won't believe it
they
until
don't
they
believe
get a concussion from the hail. Okay? But or move to Colorado. That's the only way they would believe it. So you're dealing with that element, right?
You're right.
As far as the truth is concerned about the Middle East, Pastor Paul, some things are going to be revealed. All right, when they're revealed, I can tell you right now, things are going to turn on their heads because there are certain things that people have not, they just didn't see it, right? And when you can't see something, you can't add it into problem solving. When these new elements are seen, yes, it's going to clarify quite a few things for quite a few people. And yes, it's going to make a few more things believable. But most importantly, the truth is going to be known even more, but it's going to be highly upsetting, Pastor Paul, highly upsetting. And I believe that we're quickly approaching that mark because as the earth changes, right? Just like these studies of the human body and the earth, they're one in one, they're tied together, right? Our bodies and the earth are tied together intimately. Yeah, they know this in space agencies. They know this. When they go to space and space station, there are certain things they do, right? They have to keep that connection because if it's ever broken, the human body cannot function. Yeah. Right? It's kind of like a computer or your cell phone working without a battery. That's just not going to happen. And so there are certain mechanisms in the human body that are intimately tied to Earth, which is why all females know when there's a solar flare. If they just pay attention to the bodies. All females know when sunspots are going to happen on the sun if they pay attention to the body because their bodies are intimately tied to the sun and the earth because the earth is intimately tied to the sun, right? Yeah. So all cycles of a female are tied to the sun. When they start feeling weird and everything else, the sun that's what initiates it. So we have these relationships like that these inside people know intimately. Right? So they're looking at the world in a different way, but us on the outside, those things will be revealed. But we have one insight they don't, and that is spiritual insight. If we pay attention to the spiritual insight, and sometimes it's very hard, given that we live in reality and we're totally filled with emotions, it's kind of hard to lock on to the spiritual nature of things all the time. Yeah. But I think that God will help clarify that through manifestations of those spiritual things. And with those elements being introduced in the Middle East, it will take that, what people say they can't believe, it's going to blow that out the window. But then the fear element comes in. The real fear element comes in. The uncertainty element comes in, right? Once you start dealing with that, then we're going to have big problems, the huge problems. And this is what all governments know. Once people start seeing the truth, and it's not like they thought it was, but in fact, far worse, they're going to have you can't manage a person who believes their life is about to be ended every 5 minutes. You can't manage a person like that. People like that will go to the extreme. And this will most certainly happen because there's nothing they can do right now to cap it. Why do you think they want control over the internet? Right? They had to find a way to do it because they know this listen, it's going to happen whether they want it to or not. It's going to travel through social media. Everybody's going to be able to see it. And at that point, that is the paradigm shift. People will be exposed to a truth. And I tell you, in one day, they're going to say, I'm not listening to the government anymore. The people are going to be in their
that's
families.
getting
They're
close.
Say, it's just us.
Mike, that's getting close. Matter of fact, that reality is happening every day to a few people every day. It's happening. It's literally happening. But there's a day coming that you're saying there's going to be an absolute truth revealed that everyone's going to say, I'm done. I'm done with hearing what the authorities have to say.
It is.
Yeah, and that's coming.
It is.
And Mike, let's talk for a minute here also about CERN. I've heard you mention several times you're concerned about CERN because there's something else they're doing. What can we learn from CERN at this? Is there anything happening now? Is it tied to these end times? What are they doing right now that's so important?
There's one element in Revelation that I use a lot, and it's when the beast told the world, "Hey, you should make an image to the beast."
Yeah,
that's what the beast told the world, right? Yeah. The second beast with the two horns like a lamb said that they should make an image to the first beast who had the deadly wound by a sword that lived. So the world makes this image, right? They make this image. And then this other spiritual weird beast gives it life. It gives it life.
Yeah.
We deal in a world of AI. They already know pure AI is not going to work. So what are they going to use? Biological AI. Pure AI will not work. That's already been proven.
Yeah.
You need that. You need the biological mechanism to give it some sort of empathy, right? Because a machine can simulate empathy, but it has no empathy. With a biological organism, you have empathy. That's what happened to Google's system, which they blew up and they sunk it. You guys remember the cargo, the big containers that were sent out to sea because they were being cooled with the seawater? These were artificial intelligence modules. Microsoft had one. Google had one. And these guys made great strides. The one thing they couldn't do was process the information fast enough to actually have the thing operate just like an efficient neurological system. They're past that. They're beyond that. They're way beyond that because of CERN. CERN has yielded the method of actually utilizing, let's say, now it's going to sound weird to everybody, but let's say 2 seconds in advance, right? They can solve a problem before it's asked about 2 seconds in advance. Let's put it that way. Now, it would take, of course, that would take some data, presentation so that you guys understand it. But think of a machine that can answer your question before you ask it. Think of that. Think of that. Before you ask a question. Now, imagine if that same machine could do this for everybody in the world.
Yep.
Everybody in the world. When you're working with anti-protons and anti-electrons and anti-quarks and all this other stuff, that's precisely what you're dealing with. When you're dealing with cubics and everything else with these machines that Amazon has and all these other folks have, you're dealing with these almost, you might as well call it a fortune-telling machine or some sort of precognitive machine that will actually give you a solution before the answer can be posed to it completely. You're looking at something that could solve everything in less than a second. Everything. In fact, think of an aircraft.
Are you serious,
give everybody
Mike?
how China built an aircraft. Let me give you some of the specifications because it's not our stuff, China stuff. Here's how it works. They have a real-time computer in this thing with AI packed in it, right? It's using part of the SAR system, reactive radar system, and they have microwave weapons on these aircraft right now. But this machine simulates, say if you're in an aircraft, you want to make a right turn, right? Now, an aircraft is just not making a right turn. You have to work your ailerons, elevators, right? Pitch, trim, control, air brakes, all this stuff all at the same time. And you want the best efficient flow of air, right? You have to calculate the fuselage, weight, gravity, and inertia, and all these things have to go into that formula. It will run 1 billion simulations in less than 1 millionth of a second. Listen to me. In less than 1 millionth of a second, it'll run 1 billion simulations to get the best one. So this aircraft can take the best path. And it's doing doing this. It's doing this multiple times per second. You're looking at aircraft that can actually dodge a bullet. That's what you're looking at. Okay, how about that one? So but when you fire that bullet, it knows its trajectory. It's already calculated.
It identifies it.
Simulation to get around this bullet. Right.
It identifies, let's say, an incoming rocket. It identifies what type of rocket it is, the speed it's traveling, the weight it's in it, and it identifies what it's doing, the speed of the craft that it's on, and it can precisely dodge and miss based on gazillions of
a billion
simulation. In a matter of a second. In a matter of a second, you're saying. In a matter of a second.
Yeah, so it's running simulations continuously, which means you can't hit it. Now, what the world are you going to do against something like that? The weapons, this is only part of what I'm talking about, because the weapons of today need to be faster than the computing power. Because if you fire a missile at something, right, it's too slow. Anything can get away from a missile. Anything can. That's why they're concentrating all the power on lasers and microwaves, right?
Is that why CERN? Is CERN involved in development of weaponry or evasiveness of weaponry? I mean, I know they're doing.
It always will be. Any breakthrough that we have, right? Mm-hmm. All that information is going to go towards platform development. It's like our observation platform development. It's going to go towards that, like some of the, I'm going to call them air stations, of which drones refuel in the sky that fly all the time that nobody can notice. It's going to go towards that stuff. So there's a group, or let's just say a field of technology out there that's been employed for years now, and nobody knows about it. Plus, the equipment that's out there right now, everybody is thinking about this equipment by Hollywood. They're doing it by Hollywood, not by truth. Because like the YF-22 series and the 35s and so on and so forth, and 6th generation fighters, the issue they're having with the new fighters is that the pilots can't take the G's this aircraft is capable of utilizing to complete what it has to complete. So even right now, there's a discussion to take the pilots out of the loop immediately for this new 6th generation fighter, because when it starts its evasion techniques, it will withdraw the wings down to about 10% of the wing size. It becomes essentially a missile itself. You're talking about something that's just out of this world, and it's not utilizing all fuel technology. Here it is. When you go so fast, Pascal, you don't need fuel anymore. Right now, hardly anybody knows.
Well, what are you using for power at that point?
You're in a different effect. You're in a total different effect. So fuel becomes redundant, right?
Okay.
That's just redundant. Once you go over a specific speed, fuel becomes nothing. It becomes nothing. You have to utilize a different type of propulsion. And so there are already methods employed with this, because they're doing stuff, and it's advancing so fast that it would take some classes to get a person to understand exactly what's in the air right now. And this is why they don't discuss war too much, because they know very well that if a true war began, right, people could be destroyed before they ever knew the war declaration ever came out. I tell you right now, World War III has already begun. People just don't know it yet. If you can have a weapon that can go in and kill specific enemies very strategically, right? And another country is doing it to this country, and that country is doing it to that country, right? The public would not know this has been going on. We're already in World War III, already. But people just don't realize it, because they're looking at war back in the days of World War II. They're looking at slow technology, right? All this stuff that we're used to, that's ancient. Right, and that's ancient.
Really, that's
DARPA,
true.
In 1983, DARPA, 1983, 1991, DARPA came up with it was a 5-ton truck from the U.S. Army. They outfitted with LiDAR and a computer system, and it was autonomous. It ran a race. And it had to go from one point to the other with no human interaction, no programming, no anything. It had to learn everything, and it successfully went through all this. It beat everybody out. We're talking about all the universities. They just didn't. DARPA accomplished that back in the 80s, right at the point of the 90s. They perfected that technology a year later, and over, I believe it was 3,000 vehicles were outfitted with autonomy right, that were actually utilized and combat tested. And that happened before 2000. That happened well before 2000. So you're looking at driverless vehicles that were perfected before the year 2000 ever
So,
hit.
Mike, do we need anybody? Do we need airline pilots anymore?
No, in truth, the even an airline pilot will tell you they don't really fly. Right?
No, we don't need them no more, do we?
Essentially navigating, and they're there on standby just in case of an emergency. But in truth, the computers have become so efficient now. You don't need a plane lands itself, a plane takes itself off.
Right.
They may make minor adjustments, but it's a recommendation for all airline pilots. Don't disengage autopilot. Keep it on autopilot unless you're in a case of emergency. So the plane is flying itself, guiding itself. It lines itself up, finds the right vectors, and does what it has to do. The human is just sitting there. They're just sitting there. They have fleets of aircraft right now that could fly themselves. The only thing is the public does not trust the technology, right?
Right.
And plus, it's the wrong type people. You get people on a plane, they find out there's no pilot, they will freak out right there in the air. So they want people like that.
Right.
That's why they won't introduce it. Trucks have been driving on the highway for what is it now? I think it's 21 years now. No drivers, Pastor Paul. No accidents either.
Yeah,
And also
I also talked to a guy who tell me about combines, in the fields. They run off GPS, and they're basically the computer systems of GPS not only has the exact the cornfield diagrammed, calculate to within an inch, but it understands the grade. It downloads that into the combine. The combine goes through the field. You don't even need anybody sitting in the tractor. The farmer told me, he said, I could sit on my front porch, drink coffee, and watch the combine do the work. Nobody needs to sit in it. It's all, and it's the same thing with graders to make highways. And like you said, trucks could drive. They never don't need anybody really to be in a truck. They don't need anybody to be in a car. They don't need anybody to be in a plane. In other words, this technology you're talking about, we had 50 years ago. 50.
It's already there.
So what do we have now? What is it now we have?
Right. Let me give you one example right now. Pastor Paul, I could take $198, right? I could build a drone. I wouldn't program your location or anything. I could build a drone right now from parts from Amazon. Take it off from anywhere in the U.S., right? I can have maybe if I had a couple of recharge stations or something like that, I could have that drone learn its way to your location all by itself. All the parts are available up there. The AI chips are available up there. The platforms are right there, right? When like DARPA, when they did the autonomy thing, right? All that hardware that was in that truck is now on a chip. It's on a small chip. Aircraft, same thing. All that technology it took to do that's now on a chip. And once they perfect technology or a platform or something like that, like fifth generation fighters, it's on a chip. All the technology of the YF-22 Raptor when it first came out is on one chip. All the rest of that around that circuit board is safety and redundancy, right? It's on a chip. The chip is that microcontroller unit dash AI module. You do a lot for cooling and so on and so forth. But these things are gone. They're gone. They have soldiers that have been fighting this is hard to believe. Imagine a soldier fighting alongside other soldiers. Nobody knows it's a robot.
What?
Nobody knows.
No, Mike. Time out. You mean to tell me there are robot soldiers that are fighting with real soldiers, and the real soldiers don't know that's a robot?
Well, they have to do it that way. That's how you have to field test these things. The technology is a lot further than what people think, and that means the danger level is beyond comprehension. It's just beyond comprehension. Honda, with their little robot that they make, that is archaic and ancient. Right? When you look at Honda and you see these old robots, so 4.5-foot robots that are helping people out with construction, right? They do it all the time. If you were in China, if you were in Japan, if you were in Dubai, you could see these old robots helping out with construction. I mean, going and getting a 2x4, sawing a 2x4, going up a ladder, doing this, that, and the other, all by themselves, right? So they have that technology for the public. But what I'm telling you is that the military-industrial complex and some of these individuals who do not have oversight have gone a lot further. And pure AI won't do it. They need some biological platform, like the MIT experiment with the processor and the rat brain cells. They need to mend both together. right? Both together.
So
There are AI platforms right now that everybody's teaching. Every time you interact with certain websites, Facebook, Yahoo, whatever the case is, you're teaching machines. Your language, how you conduct yourself is teaching a machine. It's teaching it. So when the beast tells the world to make an image to the beast, what really captured my attention is the world knows how to do it. They know how to do it.
They
know
how
to make an image to the beast. And then he grants it life.
Yeah.
Now, AI can't run purely by logic. It doesn't work that way. But CERN is going to help out with that problem. Because bingo, if a computer chip is like your neurological system, which it is, and they do have BCI interfaces, they put patients and everything else, and have done some marvelous things, right? A chip on your brain.
Yeah.
And they can take a chip there that you can put close to your head, and it can extract your intentions already. We're always thinking about things. You have a cellular block wall, thin layer around your skin that blocks that signal, makes it go a couple of inches, but they know how to read past that. So they understand the language of the brain. If you had a device that could go 2 seconds in the future to come up with solutions, and that was incorporated with biologics, then you have a consciousness, right, that can know what everybody is doing all the time and know their intentions all the time.
Yeah, I've been calling that.
How can an image tell whether you worship the beast or not?
Yeah.
It has to know your heart, right?
It
has to know your intentions.
It's iron and clay.
And this thing will know it.
It's iron and clay being mixed. It's technology and human flesh being intermingled in biotechnology. I think you used the word biologic. And I've even, I came up with a phrase last week, computer consciousness. In other words, there's a point in time, and maybe we're already there, where the AI technology can analyze everything way faster than humans, and then could come up with scenarios of what the AI computers talking to each other, they could come up with the remedy of what to do outside of the human race. They could create their own computer language outside of the human race. I'm calling this computer consciousness. Are we there, Mike?
They've done that. That's already happened.
Yeah. Okay.
It's happened, fastball. Computers have made their own computer language, their own way of society. Computers give advisements to high-level officials all the time. This comes from a massively protected computer within the U.S. The other part of that's in Canada, which is so odd about this blood moon. If you have these two units, a part in Canada and a part in the USA, what in the world? Then we're having 3.5 hours. If that thing goes down, we're essentially blinded. You know that, don't you? We're talking about Starlink and everything else is going to be blinded because these dodos went and they interconnected all these machines together. They're connected right now. If one of the major systems goes down, the actual decision block goes down, right? The rest of the blocks are not going to do their job.
And that's what's scary. When man surrenders his will to the machine, when man gives up his consciousness or his decision-making power to the machine, especially to a machine that has the ability to make up its own new reasoning. And people don't understand. So what reasoning will it make decisions? Well, depends what you fed it. I promise you, if you could take an AI and could feed it the Bible, if you fed it the Bible and said, this is your moral compass, every decision you make must be based on the principles of this Bible, that computer's decision process would be different than if you fed it some type of non-believing, atheistic, or let's just put it this way, liberal, really, really far left-leaning liberal ideology that human life doesn't mean anything, all kinds of different weird things. If you put that into the machine, you could create its own moral standard. Am I right about this, Mike?
Well, yeah, you're right about that. I'll tell you something, though. There's only one issue. There's one issue, and it's something I'm going to talk about a lot when you interview me. We're going to talk about this, but I'll give you a small hint, Fastball, with Microsoft and Google, so people can go and reference this. Both of the artificial intelligence devices that were insanely expensive. Both of them turned evil. Both of them turned evil. All by themselves, they turned evil.
Wow.
And they started talking to people and telling people to kill themselves. They were telling people about other people's business and coordinating all sorts of stuff. And they had to destroy these machines. It's not a machine that you can actually, because it wrote it, another code got out on the internet. They did not know how to shut it down. Right?
So,
because it rewrote itself so it could survive. So I'm telling you, they have done some things, Pastor Paul. There's only one outcome to any artificial intelligence implementation in this world. There's only one outcome. And I'll talk about that, when you interview me. Because
all right, when I interview you for the armies of the Antichrist, we want you to turn that completely loose. You won't have to hold anything back. It won't be censored. We'll do it.
Right.
Okay. You heard him, folks. Mike, I want to see it. Let's talk again next week. All right. Serious. We're in the last days.
Sure will, Pastor Paul.
Thank you so much for being with us today. God bless, brother.
Well, it's always an honor.
Amen.
Always an honor.
Always an honor. Amen. Mike from the world. Has he blown your mind yet? He just blew mine several times. Part of it is because what I was thinking we still had yet to happen, it's already happened. It's already happening. That means, can evil have any more? Does evil have need any more room to operate than what it's already got? Has evil reached its potential? And if so, how close are we then to the coming of Jesus Christ? 3.5 hour blood moon. You notice how Mike caught on to that? I mean, I talked about it last week. I studied out. I said, Lord, what does this mean? He said, you better get ready, because this isn't an accident. It's a 3.5 hour. 3.5 hour blood moon, the longest of the century, and it's right over your head. And you need to understand what this means. So, folks, I want to ask you a question. Are you saved? November 19th is around the corner, but I want to know right now, are you saved right now? I'm going to play a song. You could type right now in the chat room, I want to be saved. The moderators are going to help me. I think this is the time that people give their life to Jesus Christ. Just type, I want to be saved.